My name is Angela Provost. I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana. My parents moved to Houston, Texas when I was about 3 years old. They moved to Houston for better opportunity because of the limited resources for people of color in the Acadian region of Louisiana. And so I grew up mostly through my childhood and early adult years in Houston. I moved back to New Iberia when June and I met and got engaged. My dad is a construction worker foreman, and my mom is a business analyst for Houston Community Colleges systems. My father went through high school. My mother graduated college after they moved to Houston, and it was later on in life. I think she was around 40, around my age now when she graduated from college with a business management degree. My family was very good at telling us stories of old, like about my grandparents, great-grandparents, back until days of enslavement, like how we got here, what region of Africa our family was from, how we migrated from what is Iberia Parish, where I live now, up to northern Lafayette Parish. And that was generally the furthest that they could move forward without facing some sort of like white supremacist, vigilante group out there. It was during Reconstruction. So it took, I know my ancestors on my mother's side, it took them a while, and this is my mom's, on my grandmother's side, right? So it took them a while to leave the plantation of Oak Lawn Manor. I know it was in the wintertime after 1865, so it was like maybe a few years after quote unquote freedom, and they headed north. They migrated towards Lafayette Parish. They actually got as far north, I think, as what would be considered I-10, where we are, and they were actually pushed back a few miles south because from what my grandmother says is that her great-grandfather said that they could go no further, that they would have to escape in the night hours. And anytime that they settled anywhere because of white supremacy, they were pushed further back south after trying to migrate north. You know, researching in history, there was an organization called the White Man's League in South Louisiana. Reading through a lot of historical narratives, you read how they boast about the hangings and the lynchings that were done publicly, that were used to intimidate Black people and poor whites as well. It's quite a tale to read, and I feel more connected to those stories now, especially because of what June and I are facing today. Now, one of the things that I think with us, because of Catholicism, we're able to trace a lot of our heritage because of the quote-unquote mixed race that goes on that's recorded in Louisiana history. Baptismal records too. You can trace a lot more, I think, because of Catholicism and what the Catholic Church was doing.
Well, I'm Wenceslaus Provost Jr., but I go by the nickname of June Provost. I was born in New Iberia, Louisiana, and I'm a fourth-generation sugarcane farmer. I mean, even going through school, I took vegetable gardening in high school, and I remember the teacher, we would always talk about farming, and the teacher asked me, June, you mind come and chop the garden? I said, no, not at all. He said, look, if you chop the garden, you have A's for the rest of the year. So the next day I came with a tractor and I chopped that whole garden. So everything about my family has just been farming, from my grandfather to my great-grandfather. Right now we live on property that my grandfather, he purchased in the Jim Crow era. So it was a 30-acre tract. So at that time, that was pretty huge. So, it was a family farm. I farmed with my dad, my uncles, my brothers. I even keep in communication with my 7th grade teacher. And he still, to this day, like, if I see him in Walmart, he would say, I still have that letter that you wrote. What do you want to be when you get older? And I always told him I wanted to take the farm over. I felt so strong in my family's legacy. That's what I live for. I always tell people I don't have any hobbies, because farming was my life. It was my hobby. I mean, I don't fish, I don't hunt, I farm. It was my enjoyment. It was never a job. To go through what we're going through now, it's really difficult, but we made that decision to fight, for my family's legacy. So, growing up was actually fun. I mean, I remember just the minute I get out of school, like especially in high school, I would drive straight in the field. Even if it was for an hour in the afternoon, that's what I loved. I mean, to work on the side, your brothers and your dad, just seeing them in a field, each in a tractor, just passing one another. I mean, a lot of people don't get to do that. I mean, to work side by side with your family, that's powerful. I mean, and my dad was he was sick. He had a lot of things against him, diabetes, a lot of things. But to see him still want to get in a tractor and work and turn over that dirt, that's something I mean, that's a memory I'm gonna have for the rest of my life. I mean, to be side by side with your brothers. I mean, even though sometimes you bicker and you have these little arguments, but to work side by side with your family, that's I mean, the greatest feeling in the world. And to be playing in the dirt. I always say, you can smell the dirt when it's being turned over, and it's the God's honest truth. I mean, I remember it was a new piece of land that we took over. It was maybe like 150 acres. And it was some landlords that came to us and said, do y'all want to farm our property? And we were like, well, sure. So we just started just tilling the land. And I remember my dad, it was just like, he said, smell that. He said, this is going to produce a crop. And I was young at that time. I really didn't know what he was saying. But as I grew older, I mean, I understood. It's just like, if you take care of the land will take care of you. But to see that dirt being turned over and the smell of it and the tractors, the diesel smell, which may sound crazy to some people, but for me, that was a sign of like hope. I mean, that was, a crop is gonna grow from that. Like a lot of things my dad was telling me, it just at that point when I was younger, I didn't really understand. But as I grew older, it's just like you understood all those small things he was telling us. I get emotional thinking about it, but it's just, he was just preparing us for it. I mean, everything is almost the farm was first. And that's kind of how I was. I mean, it was just like the farm. The farm is like, that was our baby. That was that was our life. I mean, that's what he lived for. Even if we had air conditioning in the trucks riding, we had the windows down, arm out the window, just riding and looking at the crop. I mean, to see something pop out the ground, it's just like somebody planting a garden. I mean, it's just on a bigger scale. I would try to just do everything my dad would do. I mean, Angie would fuss sometimes because even if it wasn't my field, I would still just look at the field and just be amazed of, how something can grow out of that ground. So
Why would I fuss at that?
because I would slow down traffic. So it was just like,
Oh yeah, he still does that.
I
too.
still do that to this day. I mean, the love I have for farming is just, I mean, and I get it from my dad. I mean, he loved it. I mean, holidays, Christmas holidays, we would be out in the field. I mean, that was just what we loved to do.
His parents got married in 1964, I believe. And I think your grandfather bought the land maybe a couple of years before that. Yeah, so the land that we live on now was bought during the civil rights era.
Okay.
Yes. And not only did his grandfather buy the land, but his grandfather also became a member of a cooperative sugar mill that's in the area that still operates today. So we have like the official stock paper of his share in the sugar mill. There were many black sugarcane farmers at that time, and many of the African American cane farmers that they had were farming larger plots of land than some of their surrounding white counterparts. And so we do think that he wasn't the only one. I think that there were quite a few. I think there was more of a supportive network at that time of black farmers. With us in South Louisiana, like you can say that our tradition of cultivating sugarcane has been passed down through slavery. The practices of farming a subtropical crop are literally handed down through our ancestors. And as that crop was becoming more and more lucrative, and becoming in the control of the hands of like the US government, foreign policy, foreign trade, all of those things, you can see it just slipping through our hands and how that wealth just was steadily lost throughout the years. We think that he may have had extra jobs around. There's a salt mine nearby. Many of the black farmers in the community, like doing sharecropping and during the Jim Crow era especially, had multiple jobs and multiple resources to try to sustain their land. And sometimes land was handed down. I think with his grandfather, just like traditionally also with my family, land was handed down even through the days of enslavement, but also through extra jobs that were done alongside the farm. Janitorial services, there's a salt mine nearby.
Because my dad even worked at a salt mine as well. So.
Yes, and so those things were done to supplement income in those days. What we've heard, especially with his grandfather, you would have neighboring white communities where they didn't have anyone to leave their land behind too. And if there was someone sharecropping the property or nearby who was a person of color, that white person would then in turn say, do you want to purchase this property at a low price, or something like that would happen. I know particularly with his grandfather, that's what happened with the property that we live on. A neighboring white farmer said, I don't have anyone else to leave this land to. Do you want to purchase it at a low cost price? One of the things that when you come to New Iberia, the black and white citizens resemble each other, right? And so you can see it in the small, like just nuances of facial expressions or bone structure, things like that. There is a database at the library, at our Iberia Parish Library, that a man started, and it's called My Cousins or something like that. And he lists all families, and it's white and black, of people who are assumed to be related or can be proven to be related through historical documents. And so, yeah, and it's a database of like combined heritage. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I can tell you this, Carrie Lee, and I'm gonna.
I disagreed with her, but
it's proven, yeah. Okay,
yes.
So this is the thing. I think what it is that you will find in communities in Louisiana that are particularly close to plantation homes or homesteads that are still close. So you would consider Lafayette to be further away from River Road or the Bayou Teche. When you live closer to the Mississippi River or places like the Bayou Teche, you're still living in that plantation, southern antebellum community, that historical oppressive nature. So when you live near the great rivers or bayous of Louisiana, sometimes real history is oppressed or suppressed to the community. Even though like you and I may be cousins and we know that, none of our parents would talk about it or really delve into that type of history. That, I think, is something that also comes through like the oppressive nature of trying to hide historical facts and to keep communities divided, right? So with June's family, part of that is not knowing exactly, you guys are all, you're African American, but you're pretty fair complected. And it's a group of y'all who live down a few streets. Some of you all may be related to each other, right? But you really don't discuss the lineage of why your community is so secluded and why it is that you look the way you do. You know something went on. You know there's a plantation down the road, quite a few of them. So there had to be some intermingling there.
There are quite a few white Provosts, yes. And me and Angie always disagreed with that, but I can't disagree with her anymore because it's.
Actually, the Provost name comes from Prevost.
Prevost, yes.
And there's a Prevost museum in Jeanerette, Louisiana, about 10 miles away from us. And so the Prevost Museum is on a small sugar plantation itself, right? Now, what's more interesting is June's Olivier side of the family, with Charles de Vinzet Olivier, who brought two enslaved women from New Orleans to the Iberia Parish community and created what is essentially the Grand Mary community, for which June's on his maternal side. And so some of those things are like, man, we should really be talking about or bringing that to light with some sort of historical narrative and marker for the community.